People used to say the rotary engine died back in the 90s. It was seen as too inefficient, too outdated, and basically beyond any realistic chance of making a comeback. But what if the rotary never truly failed? What if it was simply buried in silence, waiting for the right moment to return? On the outskirts of Hiroshima, inside a completely sealed-off facility, a small team of engineers had been quietly working on a project codenamed RELECT. The entire program was hidden behind a network of shell companies and technology grant applications so thin they barely attracted any attention. And at the center of it all sat a strangely smooth mechanical unit. No pistons, no valves, almost no noise, just a mechanism continuously spinning. This wasn't simply the revival of an old technology. It was a complete rebuild designed for an entirely new kind of war. Before we go any deeper, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss any of these incredible technology stories. A few months ago, Mazda's CEO made a cryptic statement. "The future won't be something you have to plug into a wall." The audience laughed, but what they didn't know was that testing had already begun. An electric hybrid system, powered by a rotary engine, had reportedly traveled around 1,100 kilometers without ever connecting to the electrical grid. This wasn't science fiction, and it wasn't a prototype that existed only on paper. It had actually been driven in the real world. Inside that test vehicle was a compact rotary generator only slightly larger than an espresso machine. The unit could spin at speeds of up to 12,000 revolutions per minute while continuously supplying electricity to the electric drivetrain using nothing but synthetic bioethanol. Its fuel efficiency was reportedly an astonishing 48.2%. Emissions were said to be close to zero. This wasn't simply the return of the internal combustion engine. It was more like hitting a reset button powerful enough to restart the entire game. Mazda may have hit exactly where many electric vehicle companies are most vulnerable: independence from the power grid. No superchargers. No massive lithium supply chain. No absolute dependence on cobalt mines in the Congo. All this system needs is fuel that can be grown, produced, distributed, and regenerated whenever necessary. In a Japanese patent filed in 2022, Mazda registered a new architecture called MPHV1. It is a modular platform designed to use a rotary generator as a range extender while also supporting quickly removable fuel cartridges. In theory, that means motorcycles, boats, and even aircraft could all share the same core engine architecture. Instead of swapping batteries, users would simply swap fuel modules. And this is where the story starts moving into geopolitical territory. A leaked internal memo reportedly connected to Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry allegedly confirmed that the government had invested more than 180 billion yen into RELECT through outside companies that looked like ordinary energy startups. Why would they do that? Because according to the way Japanese officials reportedly described it, electric vehicles are not the final destination. The real objective is energy sovereignty. While many Western automakers continue pushing increasingly strict regulations designed to move the entire market toward electric vehicles, Japan hasn't responded with loud opposition. Instead, it has quietly taken a different path. The plan reportedly targets 2027 for large-scale deployment of rotary-based hybrid vehicles across Southeast Asia, potentially bypassing the need to build an enormous charging network altogether. While Tesla builds more charging stations, Mazda is apparently trying to build a transportation system that doesn't need those charging stations in the first place. At the Geneva Motor Show, two top European executives were reportedly given a private demonstration of a working Mazda prototype. Just a few weeks later, one of them, who was running an electric vehicle battery company at the time, suddenly resigned without making any significant public statement. Not long afterward, the company's shares were delisted. Behind the scenes, analysts reportedly began whispering the same phrase, rotary detonation. Meanwhile, Toyota was said to have quietly licensed 4 core patents from Mazda, including a rotor cooling system, a hydrogen pre-compression chamber, and a thermal balancing algorithm. If that information is accurate, it suggests Mazda's technology could scale far beyond a single vehicle platform. And this is the point where the rotary engine starts becoming much more than just another automotive engine. In a newly released Japanese defense document, ultra-compact rotary range extenders were reportedly listed among potential applications for unmanned aircraft. In other words, these systems may not be intended only for cars. They could be aimed at drones, modular transport vehicles, and military logistics networks operating completely off the electrical grid. Because when the grid goes down, fuel can become one of the most flexible energy sources still available. Mazda's gamble, then, may be about much more than technology. It could be a bet directly tied to the company's long-term survival. In a world being pulled increasingly toward lithium, Mazda is turning back toward fuel chemistry. And if that strategy works, the technology it creates might not only shake up the electric vehicle industry, it could completely change the way we define an electric vehicle. Rotary engines were never really considered engines built for flight. At an altitude of 30,000 feet, the idea becomes even harder to imagine, especially in a low-pressure environment aboard a vehicle without a conventional turbine or familiar pre-combustion system. And yet in March, a test vehicle reportedly linked to the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, or JAXA, was spotted over the Pacific Ocean. Its sound was described as almost impossible to mistake, a sharp, extremely high-speed rotational tone combined with an unusual intermittent combustion rhythm, yet with almost no noticeable heat signature. The aircraft carried no identifying markings, used electric propulsion, and had a classified operating range, but it reportedly was not powered entirely by batteries. Instead, the system used something Mazda engineers now reportedly call type pulse, or rotary pulse. According to partially disclosed patent documents, this aviation-grade system uses a mixture of ethanol and pre-compressed hydrogen before feeding it into a dual-chamber rotary core cooled with liquid nitrogen. The entire power generation module reportedly weighs less than 90 kilograms, making it compact enough to fit into a space roughly equivalent to a conventional fuel compartment. The system operates extremely quietly, produces electricity continuously, and can function under atmospheric conditions where conventional lithium-ion systems face serious limitations. And this is where the surrounding data becomes much more interesting. 2 months after the Pulse system was reportedly spotted in Japan, a long-range drone company called Alpha suddenly suspended all prototype flights. The company had previously received funding from DARPA. Just days later, an Australian aviation mapping startup called Skyvance reported a combustion system failure involving its hydrogen-electric platform and then completely froze its research and development division. What gets mentioned far less often is that both companies were reportedly using the same supplier, a research laboratory in Osaka called Rotokinetics. That facility no longer exists as an independent organization because Mazda is said to have quietly acquired it in 2021. With a single acquisition, Mazda may have absorbed one of the very few civilian teams outside government capable of developing miniature aviation rotary systems. And if that really happened, the rest of the market may have been pushed several years behind. Meanwhile, Toyota's hydrogen division reportedly made an unusually dramatic shift of its own. Around 20% of its fuel cell research and development budget was said to have been redirected toward rotary electric hybrid systems. One leaked internal strategy document labeled Operation H Override reportedly contained a remarkable sentence. If Relect scales up, we will no longer be competing with Tesla. We will be competing with Mazda for the sky. Back on the ground, the oil industry also reportedly started seeing warning signs. For the first time in decades, rotary technology may be moving toward an engine architecture that is no longer tied to a single type of fuel. Unlike many conventional piston engines, the new rotary architecture can reportedly adjust its ignition cycle to work with methanol, ammonia, and even synthetic fuels. In the tests being discussed, Mazda's engine reportedly continued operating on 5 different fuels without requiring changes to its core mechanical components. What it mainly needed was a software adjustment to the control system. If that capability reaches commercialization, it could create a major separation from the traditional fossil fuel supply chain. Saudi Aramco reportedly responded quickly by launching a research and development program focused on ultra-small generators compatible with synthetic fuels. But Mazda may already be one step ahead. Mazda is reportedly working with two Japanese energy startups to develop and manufacture containerized ethanol synthesis units. These systems could produce fuel from algae, food waste, and even carbon dioxide captured directly from the air. And this is where the battery industry starts paying attention. The reported mean time before overhaul, or mountbo, for each rotary unit is around 11,000 hours. Under harsh operating conditions, that figure is claimed to be significantly longer than the usable life of some battery systems currently on the market. There is no risk of thermal runaway in the conventional lithium-ion sense. There is no need to mine an enormous volume of minerals for every individual power unit. Fire risks associated with battery cells are also reduced. Mechanically, the core comes down to a rotating chamber and a fuel delivery system. As traditional electric vehicle manufacturers began watching more closely, concern reportedly spread into government policy circles as well. In Brussels, some members of European institutions were said to have requested a separate evaluation of possible emissions exemptions for rotary hybrids. In Washington, proposals to revise electric vehicle tax incentives began including concepts related to electrically driven range extenders that do not depend directly on the power grid. That doesn't necessarily mean governments are rewriting regulations because of Mazda, but it does suggest that regulators are beginning to consider the return of a type of system that many people once believed would never have another chance. While public attention remained focused on lithium prices and charging station maps, Mazda was reportedly preparing another move. A new prototype called the REX-TX1 was loaded into a shipping container bound for India's largest auto show. But this was reportedly not being described as a concept vehicle. Instead, it was said to be a nearly production-ready powertrain that had already completed preparations for certification in Asian markets. The quoted driving range was 1,400 kilometers. Refueling time was 3 minutes. The fuel type could be changed. And one line on the specification sheet stood out above everything else. No electrical grid required. But the world never got to see the vehicle as planned. Just days before its scheduled debut, Indian customs authorities reportedly stopped the container at Nhava Sheva port. No clear public explanation was given. Almost no meaningful paperwork trail appeared either. Satellite imagery was later described as showing the container being escorted inland and transferred to a private test facility outside Pune. The site was reportedly controlled by defense contractors, with no media access and no public entry. No one confirmed whether the complete prototype vehicle was ever removed from the container. What surfaced afterward wasn't a finished car. It was a drivetrain module labeled RX-1, a rotary electric hybrid platform reportedly evaluated for high-altitude transportation, multi-climate operation, and off-grid energy conversion. India, a country that has been criticized for years over the relatively slow development of its electric vehicle infrastructure, may now be looking at an opportunity to skip an entire stage. Instead of trying to catch Tesla by building a massive supercharger network, India could potentially choose a rotary future that doesn't require dense charging infrastructure, reduces dependence on imported cobalt, and limits the need for massive subsidies to expand the electrical grid. Less than 30 days later, Tata Motors reportedly signed a non-disclosure agreement with Mazda's Global Technology Licensing Division. The effects allegedly appeared almost immediately. Production schedules for some of India's first mass-market electric vehicles were pushed back. Behind the scenes, Tata's electric vehicle roadmap was reportedly rewritten with the goal of integrating RELECT architecture before 2028. At roughly the same time, Japan reportedly reached a major agreement with Vietnam to jointly develop an ethanol fueling network across Southeast Asia. But the goal was not simply to support conventional internal combustion vehicles. The new infrastructure was reportedly designed around rotary electric hybrids, optimized for low cost and reduced dependence on lithium. For countries with less stable electrical grids, the advantage becomes obvious. Instead of waiting decades to upgrade the entire power system before electric vehicles can be adopted at scale, they could potentially skip that step with an architecture that generates electricity directly on board the vehicle. Inside Volkswagen headquarters, engineers were reportedly instructed to evaluate a scenario known as the Hour Disruption Protocol. This was supposedly a worst-case forecast created by the company's internal strategy division. The scenario suggested that if rotary electric hybrids reached large-scale adoption across the Asia-Pacific region before 2027, part of Volkswagen's MEB battery architecture could become less competitive in the region. And that fear was reportedly based on more than theory. In early field tests mentioned in Malaysia, Mazda's rotary generator was said to outperform BYD's blade battery system in heat resistance and its ability to maintain continuous power output under certain testing conditions. Even more concerning for competitors, the claimed cost was around 42% lower, while refueling with locally produced ethanol reportedly took less than 4 minutes. BYD reportedly responded by redirecting around $600 million into alternative fuel research and development. NIO paused some of its expansion plans in Southeast Asia. CATL, the world's largest electric vehicle battery manufacturer, filed a patent for a hybrid battery, fuel, and rotary unit using an architecture reportedly similar in several ways to Mazda's early designs. In the United States, the silence continued in a much more calculated way. Tesla reportedly updated some Gigafactory filings to include alternative range extender systems, but Elon Musk made no public comments. In closed-door investor meetings, one reported concern was that Tesla's Solar Plus EV ecosystem could come under pressure if fuel-based electricity generation became compact enough to travel directly with the vehicle. Because once energy itself becomes mobile, the electrical grid becomes an option instead of a requirement. And when energy is no longer locked to one particular fuel or one particular mineral, lithium stops being an absolute necessity as well. Some startups reportedly began running into serious trouble. Drift Motors, a company once described by the media as the Tesla of Norway, reportedly canceled its modular electric van program after major investors pulled out over concerns that the technology could become obsolete before they recovered their investment. Freeform Electric in California cut around 80% of its battery design team. In China, 2 regional electric vehicle manufacturers reportedly filed for an emergency merger after losing government contracts. Those contracts were instead awarded to platforms compatible with rotary systems. Amazon also reportedly began paying attention to the trend. Amazon's logistics division started testing low-emission delivery drones equipped with ultra-small rotary power packs developed by a Tokyo startup rumored to have technical support from Mazda. One internal report was reportedly summarized with a very short sentence: "Battery density has hit its limit, rotary hasn't." But perhaps the most important turning point appeared in South Korea. Hyundai, which had previously been cautious about developing new hybrid internal combustion architectures, reportedly launched Project A, a program aimed at creating electric vehicle platforms powered by liquid fuel for rural areas and regions with weak electrical infrastructure. One of the project's key engineers was Dr. Kei Morita, a powertrain specialist who had previously worked at Mazda and quietly left the company in 2023. That represents a very deep transfer of knowledge, although nobody knows whether it happened entirely by chance or whether it had been planned from the beginning. Right now, deep inside an underground laboratory in Hiroshima, Mazda is reportedly testing a twin-rotor rotary unit paired with a capacitive booster. The system can charge supercapacitors while the vehicle is still operating. The goal is no longer to catch up with electric vehicles. The goal is to turn batteries into an option rather than a requirement for electric propulsion. From California to Tokyo, leading solid-state battery companies are also reportedly facing growing pressure as they deal with problems of their own. Quantum Ion Corporation, once described as one of the future leaders of the energy storage industry, reportedly had to shut down its entire experimental production line after 3 prototype cells failed during thermal cycling test. Solid Safe Technologies reported an energy density decline of around 52% when its cells were cooled below -10 degrees Celsius, undermining one of the technology's most important claims about reliable all-weather performance. Lion Energy, a startup that had raised $420 million based on the promise of ultra-fast charging, reportedly cut around 60% of its workforce after failing to secure a large-scale manufacturing partner. German startup Mega Apps quietly sold its production equipment to a consortium in Shenzhen, China, effectively acknowledging that the capital cost of producing solid-state batteries remained many times higher than that of conventional lithium-ion batteries. A February patent filing from NextGen Materials even included a reference to an ion recombination process assisted by a rotary system. If accurate, it would suggest that even some companies developing advanced battery chemistry are exploring the possibility of combining electrical energy storage with electricity generation based on fuel combustion. As concerns spread beyond the laboratories, governments reportedly began reconsidering how policy should be structured. In Berlin, a draft proposal had reportedly been introduced to restrict rotary vehicles over concerns related to vibration and emissions, with extremely large penalties proposed for systems that failed to meet the standards. The European Commission was also said to be considering provisions that would gradually phase out certain electric vehicle incentives beginning in 2029, while separately classifying vehicles equipped with integrated onboard generators. Some industry insiders believe regulations like these could directly affect modular pod-based systems, similar to Mazda's design. In the United States, tax documents were cited as showing that at least $75 million had been transferred through a non-profit organization called the Energy Futures Alliance. The money was reportedly used to support lobbying campaigns in Brussels and Washington, emphasizing the environmental impact of rotary engines. An internal United States Department of Energy memo was even described as acknowledging that if electric vehicle tax credits were changed to exclude range extenders from incentive programs, the appeal of vehicles capable of operating independently from the electrical grid could be significantly reduced. However, the same document reportedly warned that depriving rural regions of vehicles capable of operating during grid outages could create serious problems for emergency response and energy security. Meanwhile, a new lobbying organization called Citizens for Clean Charge appeared almost overnight. The group was reportedly led by several former electric vehicle industry executives and pushed for regulations favoring pure battery electric vehicles. Its financial resources were substantial, but the identities of its donors were not fully disclosed. While those policy battles played out in public, secret programs continued moving much faster behind closed doors. Inside the underground facility in Hiroshima, engineers were reportedly assembling Grid X, a network of upgraded rotary generators capable of supplying electricity to a neighborhood-scale microgrid. A leaked diagram of the RX mesh pod reportedly showed a device smaller than a large suitcase. Each unit could connect with around 10 other pods to create a self-healing electricity loop suitable for disaster zones or exploration missions completely isolated from the electrical grid. A military contract codenamed Project Ironworld was reportedly funding mobile refueling points. These facilities were designed to look like ordinary shipping containers, with each one capable of carrying synthetic bioethanol produced from agricultural waste. The idea is simple. Instead of transporting an entire large-scale power system into a battlefield or disaster zone, you transport fuel along with modular rotary generators capable of operating independently. The stock market reportedly reacted to the rumors as well. Shares of Lithium World, one of the largest lithium mining companies, were described as falling 18% in just 2 trading sessions, while biofuel tech jumped around 65%, following rumors that the company had secured an exclusive supply agreement with Mazda's energy division. And inside unmarked envelopes privately delivered to several defense analysts, there was reportedly only a single sentence written in red: "Prepare for the grid-down event." People once said the rotary engine was nothing more than a relic of the past. They said batteries were the final destination. But now, another era may slowly be emerging, one where combustion and electronics merge into a single system, where energy is freed from absolute dependence on electrical cables, and where the battle for control over energy is no longer just about metals and minerals, but moves deeper into the worlds of chemistry and physics. The final battle lines may already be taking shape. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. If you found this video interesting, subscribe to the channel right now and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.